Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Tommy Tuberville, the former college coach, who's now a state congressman in Alabama and Mississippi, they have come up with a proposal that they are making to grant the NCAA antitrust exemption first, which would allow the NCAA to control sport completely. The antitrust exemption would then lead to a template to restructure everything that's wrong with college football. And what's wrong? Left hand says the NIL, the right hand says the transfer portal. That with the antitrust exemption, if this gets approved in Congress, there would be a template of how the NCAA will operate. And the things that they are proposing, every group that would pour money into an NIL pool, you're at Miami of Ohio, you're at Washington State, whatever, has to be sanctioned and contracted through the NCAA. There will be a structure, a template for how every NIL program operates. There will be registration. There will be enforcement. You're not going to be paying every player $200,000 a year like they do in Texas. There's going to be medical coverage for players once their careers are over if they have health issues based on injuries that they got while playing at Purdue. There's going to be a change in the transfer portal. Then this is going to be controversial, but it's going to stop what we're seeing the last 2 years. John, you go to school, you play 3 years. You can't enter the transfer portal till you've been on that college campus at Bowling Green 3 years. Then you can go into the portal, one-time transfer. You can't have all this junk where these guys are going to 3 schools in 3 years. And that's happened. So they're putting that package in. I don't know how they're going to get the last piece negotiated, but I always wondered with the NIL, how does that impact Title IX? Title IX, which gave equal funding athletically to men and women. Under the Manchin Tuberville congressional proposal, there would be equal pay NIL for male athletes and female athletes. Now, if you've got a program that's got 18 intercollegiate programs, do you pay every player the same amount? Or I'm not sure how that's going to be negotiated, but that's the last part in the Manchin proposal. So it's fascinating that Congress has now stepped front and center and said, we got to fix this because this has been destructive. I have not talked to a coach in the last 2 years that think what's happened with the NIL, and they'll hide under the umbrella. Well, I'm glad the players are being taken care of. But like Brady Hook said yesterday, what about us? What about our programs? What's it doing to our programs? I haven't met a coach that thinks the NIL is been properly executed. And I don't know anybody that thinks the transfer portal, which has led to player free agency, is good. There's got to be different structure. And if Congress passes this and then hand carries it to the NCAA office and says this is how it's going to operate, and you're going to control it, and you have the authority to control it, that's where we are.
Wow. That's a lot there. I mean, of course, it's hard on Brady Hoke and all the other coaches to manage this because you got players going out the door, new ones coming in, you're trying to figure out how to pay them and all. But from the player's perspective, the NIL and the transfer portal is fantastic.
Sure.
You know, it's just like we, in the private sector, when we have a job, we can quit our job and get a new job and change jobs every year if we wanted to. So I like the NIL and a transfer portal from the player's perspective. But what is interesting here, it's a little bit of an angle, but in Washington, D.C., they're always condemning, companies from becoming monopolies. And now here they're essentially endorsing or creating a monopoly for the NCAA.
Well, but the players do have rights, and all this will be negotiated, but at least there will be structure. You won't have the Wild West. What's gone on at Georgia? What's gone on at Texas A&M? And what's happened to the group of 5 schools where not only do you recruit players, develop players, you're going to lose the players because people tamper with them. And then you got to re-recruit the guys who came to play for you to make sure they don't leave. And then you got to recruit the families.
Yeah.
There will be money for players. There will be opportunities. There will be exceptions in the transfer portal. Coach gets fired. Players could probably go into the transfer portal at that point. But we're not going to have these guys going to 3 different schools in 3 different years just so they can throw a football down the sidelines.
Well, then we don't get Jaden Ledee at San Diego State, do we? Because he transferred twice, 3 times, didn't he? So yeah, it's everything is going through this evolution. And what's funny is like, look at baseball and how powerful the players union is, and how it went from owners having such massive control to now the players having control. Well, what they're talking about the NCAA is the opposite direction. They're taking power away from the players and giving it more to the coaches and administrators.
They're giving it structure.
Okay.
Players are going to be allowed to transfer. There will be an NIL pool, but it won't be to the craziness that's gone on in the Southeastern Conference.
Okay.
That's where we are. Okay.